All right, guys, thank you for coming. Welcome. I'm pretty excited about today's topic because I think it's something that we all have to experience and figure our way to trade through. Because when I first started learning about trading, my name is Coach Becky, by the way. Thank you for being here with me at BluSky. We do these labs on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I focus on mindset and psychology, and Coach Matt focuses on technical and all the things on Thursday. Then we also have evening streamers, and Coach Riz and Mike stream throughout the day. So today is my hour, Tuesday afternoons. Thank you for being here. Today I want to talk about psychology topic all around fear. When I started learning trading, did not realize that there was a fear factor in trading. I thought it was, I don't know what I thought, I guess, but I didn't anticipate as much of a fear response in me that I would have to figure out how to deal with, because I don't naturally think of like sitting at home doing work on a computer as like a scary thing necessarily. But I definitely have experienced it and like had to sort through all the aspects of fear and developing practical strategies to have confidence despite being feared, anxious, worried about your outcomes. And so today, that's kind of what I want to dig into, is all about the concept of fear in relation to our trading and how it can be a good thing and how it factors and how you can manage it. So let's get into it. Anybody having any trouble hearing me? Because I just want to enjoy this topic with you all today. Okay, so what I want to talk about is the science behind fear, like what it actually does in our bodies, how we respond, the physiology and the brain mechanisms behind the response, and what that feels like and looks like in our body and in the moments that we're experiencing, whether we know to call it fear or what we label it as per se, just kind of what that experience is that I'm talking about today. And then the duality of it, the dual nature of what the fear response is, how it can protect you, and then also how it can be a barrier to performance, but how you can also utilize it for some strength in your approach to trading. Specifically about how it impacts trading, like day to day, minute to minute, in your executions, the risk taking, your account size, the way you manage your accounts, the way you manage your progress as a trader. I think it wraps up into all of that. And then, I gotta like make it helpful, right? Bring some practicality to it, some actionable strategies. So we'll get into that for the bulk of the heart of this talk today, about managing the fear and executing your trading system more consistently, and kind of recognizing fear for what it is and labeling it and putting it away so that we can kill it with our systems to the best of our ability. That's the plan. Okay, so let's first talk about what happens in our brain and our bodies when fear strikes, because fear does trigger an immediate cascade of physical responses designed for our survival. And so that is just the natural humanity in us. When something comes at us that's a threat, our body responds instinctually, without permission and without your acknowledgement for a period, until you start to learn to recognize the triggers. So the amygdala is the part of the brain that detects that threat first. It's very subconscious, subtle. There's a lot of different factors that play into how it picks it up. But then that is what signals your hypothalamus to activate your sympathetic nervous system. That's what most people generally know as the fight or flight system. And so that your body just kicks into high gear, it gets ready to fight, defend, organize, run, whatever needs to happen. And so like it really is a millisecond sort of response. The body is a very well-tuned machine in terms of how it instinctually behaves with certain triggers. And so this is something that if we can understand the mechanisms behind it, then we can sort of catch the symptoms in our bodies sooner. And that's kind of why I like giving you guys a little bit of backstory behind these topics, because when we can notice them sooner, we can intervene and manage them more effectively if we can catch them. So when the stress hormones and the cortisol and stuff floods your body, it's hard to know what to do in those moments. It is an ancient survival mechanism, right? So it is how humans, survived back before we had, nice cozy houses and cars and like communities per se. So it doesn't know exactly what the threat is, but it recognizes a threat is in play. And so there's going to be the physical reactions. This is what we feel when the system starts cascading. Your heart rate will go up. Not everyone is super in tune with that, but you do often notice your breathing will go quicker. So heart rate and breathing both get faster because they're getting ready to run, to fight, what have you. And so both of those systems pop. And then in that situation, you get more tense, your muscles start to engage, ready again to respond to the threat. It can mean you can start to sweat because your body is managing the fluid balances in your system. And then you tunnel vision. And so that looks like you kind of zero in on exactly what your mind, your hormones, your stress thinks you need to focus on in order to manage the experience that you're having. And so that can be for good or for evil, this tunnel vision. But the majority, the factor of it is that it tightens what you're seeing. It makes it harder to stay focused on a bigger picture because it zeroes you in on more specific information that's trying to process with you. So what happens with the brain on fear, right? So your stress response just hijacks your rational thinking. All of these cortisol and floods and adrenal hormones, they cause you to focus on the threats. And then that takes you basically into that part of your brain and out of the functional part. And so decision making and planning and following your specific trade plan, that patience that we have pre-market by having our beautiful setup where we come into it patient and focused and ready, that gets quieted rapidly as your stress response heats up when you become afraid. And so if there's a potential danger that is identified, that your body gets flooded, your judgment is impaired, your rational decision making is just stunted. It's harder to hold on to what you were going to do, what would happen at your level. Say you get a trigger to get into your trade, you enter based on your system, and then you're afraid. You start getting afraid of what happens if it goes against you. Well, then in that situation, you could make rash judgments based on that immediate pop of fear and not necessarily honor your appropriately placed stop loss per your system and maybe tighten the trade or get worried when it's just bouncing a little bit at that level and isn't just immediately taking off after you get in. That fear response can cause you to mismanage it. And that is an impaired judgment situation because you're no longer honoring your trade system in that situation. So exiting winners too early, avoiding good setups, or freezing when you need to act. Say, you're looking for a response at a current level to either hold your trade or close it out. Well, if you get afraid or you get in the stress response, you're going to make different judgment calls and potentially even freeze when you're getting the data that you need to make a decision. And so your brain really does prioritize that survival over logic in that moment of what actually would help you make the smartest decision. So it's an important thing to factor in when you're experiencing your trading day. So specifically for us traders, what does it feel like? So this is important because you want to try and catch yourself in the moments if you can. And everyone is a little bit different with how their body tends to react and experience it and give you your signals. But it could be a tight chest or stomach, that shallow, rapid breathing, the muscle tension. But the biggest thing that I think we don't tend to catch is if you can catch those physical responses, that helps. The perspective shifts is something I want us all to think about because this is where we don't necessarily recognize that we're no longer following our system until sometimes it's too late or you start mismanaging your trades and then get into a situation where maybe you're taking losses or paper cuts or paying a lot of fees because you're in and out instead of just waiting and holding your most consistent system. And so that can look like you get more short-term focus, you zero into smaller time frame charts instead of thinking about how you wanted to manage your trade on maybe the 5-minute chart for intraday and watch the 15 and make priorities based on how those candles close. But if you start to get into the stress response, you can really zero in on, say, the 1 minute, and that can not be super helpful in terms of trying not to get chopped up. Another tricky situation that can come from this period where your brain flips to is you can become more focused on your outcome, which is the money, right? It's the P&L. It's seeing your P&L wavering on the screen, and that can become the priority versus good trading. Losses can feel larger than they are. For example, if your system is such where a $500 is your max daily loss limit, and at that situation, you should close your account and no longer trade for the day. And maybe you hit that and you hit $500. And logically, you know that's a hit. You're recoverable from that. Your system can withstand that. It'll be okay. It can feel like a big assault to your person, to your system, to your day, a loss that you didn't want to take. And so it can feel like a bigger deal than you know that it is if you're looking at the long-term trajectory of your trading week and month. And so you will forget the long-term expectancy then of your system potentially when you're so focused on managing a threat versus trading well. So we need to kind of figure out what is the perceived threat. Is it real? How big does it need to be? And that's where we have to purposefully think about what we're experiencing and know the difference between, just a little bit of drawdown or a serious threat that could really compromise your situation. I think this bottom part here, that fear doesn't just make us uncomfortable, it changes how we perceive information. For me, that statement is really powerful because it's so true. Fear is uncomfortable, but we need to remember that it's actually changing our trading if we let it. And that's the whole point of this conversation today, is to think about, sure, it's uncomfortable. We all know when we're in a drawdown and we start to feel emotional, we start to feel feelings, we start to want to monkey with the trade. That's an experience. That is a stress response, a fear response. And so it is going to impact how you perceive and manage your information. And so to remember that in your mind, that this has a strong potential for impacting my system and what can I do to help manage that. it's really important to try and catch in those moments. And so that's a big part of what I kind of angle at with these psychology labs is there's going to be all these different influences in our trading day. And how can we most easily and quickly catch them in real time and intervene before we get into trouble? And so today, fear is kind of the driving energy behind that, because that is such a primal experience as humans that our body, that track is very well established in the human mechanism. It's your body is good at responding to threats because its purpose is to keep you alive and sustain you for the long term. And so this experience is just a factor as a trader until you get really good at honoring your system and managing your fear. And so this is why technical skill alone doesn't translate into a consistent execution, because there's so many other factors, right? You can learn a strong technical skill, but your body has defined mechanisms within its deep systems that it's going to go down. It's going to rabbit hole down without your permission until you target that as well as your technical skills that you need to have. So thank you again for everyone being here on Tuesday so we can talk about the flip side of just knowing what a really good setup is and how ideally we'll manage it when we're in our right minds. So let's talk a little bit about fear before we get into how we can look at it differently. So fear is protective, right? It does help us keep us alive. It's an internal alarm system that warns you that there's actually a danger. And so it can help you stop from over leveraging your account or trading with money you can't afford to lose. You can fear blowing an account, right? You can recognize that if you are in for your normal contract size and then you add another contract because you're feeling some kind of way, you're starting to cascade down emotional choices versus a trading setup situation, then you can have some alarm bells go off in your mind. And that is a protective fear where it's saying, you add another one, you're then double your size. Your risk of blowing your account has doubled in this situation. And honestly, probably more than doubled, because you're probably potentially adding in to mitigate a loss, losing positions going against you, potentially your dollar cost averaging. And so you're really exponentially starting to increase your risk. And so in that situation, when you get a fear alert that you could be really damaging yourself, that is protective. Like that's something that we want to make sure we're listening to in those moments, because you don't want to trade with money you can't afford to lose. You don't want to have a reckless position size, because that's not a part of a sustainable trading system. And again, as traders, like we want to be in this for the long game. So we want to be able to recognize that protective fear and say, I don't feel good about this. I'm uncomfortable with position size. It makes me want to squeeze a trade. Like that's probably not a trade that you need to be in, and not being in that trade is likely your better situation for your outcomes. So that it can be a catalyst to have you have healthy caution and managing your position as if you don't have unlimited capital and no one watching over your shoulder. Thankfully, with prop funding accounts, if that is your main source of your accounts, there is protection there, because when you blow an account, you're not losing however many thousands of dollars of personal money. It's a reset fee and it's time. You start back at day zero. But that's not ideal, right? That's not the end goal of becoming traders. We're using prop funding accounts as tools in order to build our accounts and build our skill in a protected environment, because they hold the most of the risk. However, we don't want to feed those bad habits. And so listening to the caution that our little alarm bells are sending off is an important part of respecting and appreciating the fear that our body has. But the flip side of that is that it can be prohibitive as well. So often fear can become outsized compared to your actual risk. It can make you hesitant or nervous about trades, or executing on trades that aren't exactly perfect. It can create missed opportunities. You can damage your confidence because you can be afraid of the trade once you get into it and get into a good trade, but then get nervous. Am I really good enough? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. You can monkey with the stop loss, or even have a stop loss just a little bit too close because you want to be protective of your accounts because you're afraid of losing them. And then if your stop was correctly placed based on the data in your system, the trade would have worked out. And so it can really cause a mismanagement of valid setups, premature exits, avoiding necessary risk, because as traders, part of the deal is we have to take risk. You have to put yourself in a situation where you have a little bit of fear, where you have a little bit of risk on, where you are accepting a loss of time, of accounts, of money in order to profit, because you can't actually profit as a trader without risking, without taking small losses here and there, without knowing that there's a give and take of that, and that we have to recognize all sides of that, right? And so avoiding risk is not a successful strategy. We have to learn how to live with it and accept it and recognize that it's part of our successful trading system. And over the long run, as we build up our system and our psychology, you're going to gain and build a positive expectancy of outcomes. And so you want to be growing this part of your trading system as well, this management of this part of your human body. And so let's talk about the outsized fear problem. So in trading, fear is proportional to the risk, right? So I love that a $200 loss can trigger the same physiological response as a life-threatening situation. Our brain can dramatize things, right? We've all experienced that. Same as like, in your relationship, you're having a fight, and then later after the fact, you realize that was actually not a big deal, and everybody needs to just take a breath and remember that everything's okay. Same thing in trading. Taking a stop loss on 1 or 2 contracts or 5 micros, in that moment, you're like, oh, I was going to win today. I'm frustrated. I want to get XYZ. So I'm set up for a payout on day 6 or what have you. In that moment, it can feel like a big deal. But in hindsight, if you let it lie, you let it rest, and you come back at it after the initial emotional uprising is settled, you'll recognize that it wasn't actually a life-threatening, a massive deal. And so that is how our body can really dramatize or catastrophize an outcome, imagining the worst case scenarios, clouding your judgment, shoving you forcefully into that fight or flight response, when rational minds could prevail sooner and recognize that you're actually okay. Like, a loss is a loss. It doesn't mean you're not a good trader. It doesn't mean you don't have massive potential for huge success in trading. But this one moment, maybe you're just not quite nailing it. And I love these statistics that I found, and it's basically about all parts of humans. These are not trading specific, but 85% of imagined outcomes in the fear scenarios never materialize. You're afraid of such and such in real life, or car accidents, or flying. A lot of people are afraid of flying, but it's actually quite reliable. Losing our money and never being a profitable trader and having margin calls and all the bad things. Realistically, it sucks. It sucks to lose. It sucks to have a hit on your account and to have to reset and start over again. But the worst case scenario generally is not as active in our situation. And RQ, I met you after you had to fly, and you did not die on that flight, there or back, because you came back. So that is a case in point, my friend, of the fear of certain scenarios. Is often there's a lot of data that supports that you'll be okay, and that our bodies can really be a bit dramatic at times. I mean, I'm not saying that as a woman or a trader or whatever, but like, that's a human thing, is that the emotional amplification will magnify your fear and your perceived risk versus the actual real risk of it. And I'm telling you, RQ, I speak from experience on all of this. Like, I am not telling you guys that you're doing something and I'm not doing something, because I've done everything that I have ever brought to a psychology lab. I'm not even gonna lie. So I feel like I understand this topic so well, because there is a situation where it's like, you fear of what other people are going to say. You fear of the missed opportunities. You can hesitate because you don't want to get in a situation that's dangerous. You want to only engage in the most profitable setups. I'm telling you right now, if you withhold from all the setups because you need a perfect A+ setup, you lose time. Like, your process is going to take longer because you're not getting skin in the game. You're not getting experience. You're not learning how to be in a losing trade and how to be in a good trade, and why a trade you thought maybe was a B was actually an A. And by entering it, you felt it, you experienced it, you got the great win. It will teach you more by being in opportunities. And if we're always afraid to take them, that will hold you back in your career. Amaro gets it. See, being dramatic too. The greatest danger in trading isn't the market. It's the gap between your actual risk and your perceived risk, which I love, because a big part of where I'm going with this is like, how we manage the risk can help us feel less fear. And so if we're doing actual strong risk management, if you've created a trading system that has legit strong risk management, you will be okay. And by knowing that we're okay because our system is strong and we can manage a day or a period of drawdown and still get back up again and live to trade another day, that's really helpful. So let's manage this, right? Let's talk about the next portion of this, which is managing our fear and what that looks like, how we can choose to take care of ourselves as traders and be able to capitalize on the amazing opportunities that the market provides. Part of that is you have to have confidence. And so succumbing to fear is a way to not allow your confidence to grow. Because if you are always nervous and anxious and mismanaging your trades, you're never going to feel good about having a really strong, solid strategy and firing a full position at your best case scenario, because you will have been kind of all over the place, which is a very real period in a trader's experience that you have to kind of just work through and try your best at your best setups and allow this to evolve with time and attention and thinking about what that looks like. And part of that is, if you know your max risk on a trade, you can feel more confident in it. Because if you know you have a trade setup that's a 2-to-1 risk to reward and you get in, maybe you'll make, a great profit and maybe you'll make a loss. But in that situation, when you have a good risk to reward, you'll be able to allow it to grow with time. See, look at that. Our risk to reward was managed today, RQ. When you have a robust risk management system, I think that is the key to targeting fear. So we have talked about this a little bit in other live streams, because this is kind of the key to the whole conversation, is that a robust risk management system will be the facts behind what you need to tell yourself to manage the fear, because you have to take the power out of fear, right? We have to just totally deflate it and know that the symptoms that I'm feeling, I got to let it go, because I am a risk manager. As a trader, we are risk managers. And so we have to be able to say, if I want to win $800, my risk is $400. It is what it is. I think this is a really good setup, and I am willing to trade on this because this is the setup I've been waiting for. And it's I recognize that I might end my day, this session, $400 red, and that's okay. And so when you can define for yourself that worst case scenario, it's easier to be okay with it. No one wants to lose, right? No, like I don't want to lose. I wager a lot of you guys probably don't either. I mean, we want to have a nice momentum up equity curve, but accepting the losses is how it goes. So when you're doing your trade plan, when you are establishing your rules, your system, your entry criteria, what your setups are, an important component to that is definitely going to be defining your risk. So you want to know your max loss per trade and per day. And so that should be something that you have thought about, that you've discussed with a coach or a mentor, and that you have written down in your written trade plan. You know where your thresholds are and how you have selected those in your logical moments so that you are protected as a trader. And then you have to make that non-negotiable. And so by pre-deciding that risk, it pulls away a lot of the uncertainty. And uncertainty is a big factor in creating your fear, because you could go into your trading day and be like, I'm going to win, but I don't really know what it's going to look like if it doesn't go well. That's a more dangerous situation. And you're going to be more fear prone in that case, because there's that uncertainty of, I don't know what's going to happen if my first trade loses, because it might just go crazy. Not the best trading strategy, I would argue, to have that uncertainty as a part of your trade plan. So think about what contract size you want to trade. If it is 5 micros, 8 micros, you scale out at 4 and 4, 5, you scale out at 3 and 2, 1 mini when you progress out of micros. If you go to 2 minis, how do you manage that to make sure that you are scaling potentially and adjusting your stop as the trade progresses? That's going to look different for different people, different strategies, where you came up in trading, what mentor you read to, how long you've been in for it, what account size you have. That's part of how you really want to make your trade system your own. And I'm a big proponent of that, of learning from a lot of people initially, and then zeroing in on the coaches and mentors that really speak to your style of trading, and then writing it out. And then from there, you can start to feel through it as you are a new and medium trader, because you want to make it work with your psychology, with who you are, how you see risk, how you approach trading. If your issue is more hesitation, or if it's like, balls to the wall, full port, you need to have rules that protect you in either way of that, so that you're making sure you are trading, but you're trading in a logical way that is sustainable. So then that's position sizing rules, right? That needs to be a part of your trading strategy. So besides just dollar amounts and numbers of trades for your risk, be clear on your position sizing. Like I said, it should be based on your stop loss and your risk tolerance. What is your general trade? I'm sorry. Sometimes I just say things out my mouth without permission. But so you want to know, if you like to take a trade based off of a doji on the 5-minute chart at your level that is holding, how many points is that? What does that look like? How many contracts can you take and still have that fit within your dollar amount of your risk tolerance for the day? And there's different ways to calculate that. So just play around with it and figure out how you can manage that. And you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're just winging it. Be like, I think this is a great setup. I know everyone is bullish today, so I'm just going to go really hard at this because it hit VWAP. Well, there could be more to that. That could be a more robust plan. You could say, if it gets to this level and holds, and I see this candle pattern, then I'll enter with 1. And then if I go, maybe your full size is 2, if I add that second contract, or if I want to go in for 2, I need to see exactly this. And then I could feel better about the risk and where my stop loss is placed in order to allow the trade to play out. Squeezing a trade is another fear response. That holds you back. You're afraid of taking the hit, so you have your stop too tight. And that can turn a winning trade that would have been profitable at the end of the day, at the end of that trade period, into a loser, because it was just chopped out by just the natural wick that it will do at a level, the natural variance of the market movement. So I love that by having these things identified clearly before the market opens, that consistent sizing will remove the emotional decision making in the heat of the moment because it's already established. You know what you need to see, what that looks like, and how big of a contract size you're going to execute with. And then the third part of this is stop loss discipline. So setting your stop loss before you enter, having it in your mind. If this candle closes this way, I really like the setup. This is what I'm seeing. This is how I'm seeing it hold. So I would want to put my stop at this level, and then choosing to honor it always. Now, this is where it's hard because choosing to honor it always, can you see my air quotes? You have to be able to quiet the emotions, to allow yourself to make the right choices and honor that. And so it shouldn't be a suggestion. It shouldn't be an idea of a stop loss. It should be, if I enter here, this is my max risk, which means my stop is here, which means it's either hit or it's not. And then when the trade starts moving in your direction, there's some variability there with how you manage your risk at that point. If you do trail up your stop loss, or what you do, so that you have a safety net to protect your accounts and to, move with you. So it's not all or nothing necessarily. Some people never move their stop losses, and to each their own, but identify that, plan ahead, organize yourself with it. So that way these strategies here, thinking about this when you're not in a trade and having it written, understood. Maybe you have an accountability partner and you tell them how you want to manage it and what you want to honor. That can help you hold to the discipline and pull the fear out of it. You cannot experience as much fear to start. Your body cannot have that cascade the more you get used to this trading approach, because you don't let yourself go down that rabbit hole anymore. You don't have the variability and the openness to just seeing whatever happens. Instead, you're coming as a business person approaching your day, and you cut out that uncertainty. Thanks, guys. We all speak the same language. That's right. So I think that this clear risk management doesn't eliminate the fear, but it dramatically reduces the intensity. I think that's my point of by not even opening yourselves up to the consideration of what if I double my size because XYZ. That is a choice that will absolutely heighten your emotional response because you're going out of the established plan that you understand and keeps you more neutral and established. So beyond those hard rules that you put in your training system, you backtest, you talk to your mentor, and you evolve with, you adjust as you need to, as you learn trading, as you adjust size, as your accounts grow, what have you. Those can be modified as you get deeper into your trading career, but always have them written out. These are some extra factors that will help you also be stronger in your system. So we've talked about this as well because it's so powerful in managing a multitude of emotional responses, but it's that box breathing, which helps you slow down the sympathetic fight or flight response and more so activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is where we have that focus, that attention, that calmness, that patience, instead of getting ready to take punches and throw punches. It will bring you back to reality. So again, that box breathing is just a deep breath in for slow count of 4, holding that breath in your lungs for a slow count of 4, exhaling 4, and then waiting for 4 seconds before you take your next breath. Really pulls down your whole body's elaborated, extensive emotional response and will help you slow your heart rate, slow your breathing, and allow your brain to come back on, your logical brain that says, wait a minute, I entered this trade based on this. This is my size. I picked this size because I want my accounts to live beyond today. Should the worst case happen, just walk away for a minute and hold your game. Box breathing is a technique that can really help with that in the moment where you're debating. And so I would encourage you, if you're thinking about throwing in an extra contract or 2, depending on what size you are, just give yourself 16 seconds and try a round of this, or maybe even double that. 32 seconds is not that big of a commitment to say, I'm just going to do a couple really deep breaths before I make this choice. That can be really protective of your accounts. And I would highly recommend you just try it here and there when you're having moments where you're debating adjusting your system in real time while you're actively trading, because that can really be a practice that serves you really well in the long run. And then I do say trade journaling. Now, not everyone, I think, does journal their trades, but I think it's such a superpower because as you're developing your system, this can be a resource for you to sort of, it's like an avenue for talking it out with yourself, right? So, not everyone talks to themselves, but our subconscious mind is really very noisy, whether you choose to acknowledge that or not. And by putting pen to paper or having an online trade journal, you can say, I did this, I like this, this was my A+ setup, this is how I got in and out and how I managed it, but also put in there your emotional state. So you can start to see, was I really anxious and I squeezed it and then it took off? Maybe that's a fear response. So then what can I do about that? Because you can often realize in looking back at your day, at the end of the day, that fear was peaking right around when you were making important choices. And then what did you do? Like in your trading session, did you let fear take the wheel or did you hold it? Did you do some breathing? Did you honor your system? And what happened from that? And then you can reset a little bit faster by having that real-time focus where you think about what you did, if you did well managing it, or if you could have done better managing it. It helps you just kind of pay attention essentially to what you're doing in your day so that you can take your little cues and try and repair your system and approach as it goes. And then scale your exposure. I kind of love that because if you are noticing that you're really anxious all the time, you're sweaty, you're having an upset stomach, you are snapping at your family because you are really just trying to lock it in, that could be a sign that you're not quite ready for the trade size that you're in at. And maybe you are trying to you saw all these people are trading 2 or 3 minis. And so you're just as good a trader as they are. Well, why shouldn't you? But maybe you just don't have quite the experience they have or a strong trading system that they can really rely on. So try to trade a little bit smaller, some micros, and then allowing your confidence to build, allowing your trade system to become more robust, you to collect that data, to ask the questions, to understand the setups more clearly and more quickly. And then you can scale as time goes on because it doesn't have to be built all in one day. It's better to trade small than to not trade at all or to trade too big that you have to reset your counts all the time. It's good to allow that to build. Omar says, mental health, self-talk generally normal. It can sometimes signal mental health conditions. Absolutely, Omar, that is very true. A self-talk that is unregulated and concerning is a very different thing. So definitely think about that and reach out if you have questions or find resources because that's a great point that mental self-talk chatter in there can be detrimental in certain circumstances. But I do think that we all have a little bit of give and take in our mind about like, I think I want to do this and I don't want to do that. And so, that is our subconscious chatter too. And that is a normal human response in general, as long as it's like within reason and not harmful ever. So very important on that. And welcome, Fatima. Happy to have you. And these labs are always recorded. And so it will be on YouTube in the next day or two. So you can watch back if you missed the beginning. Happy to have everyone here. Coach Matt definitely has issues, but we still love him. And we'll support him through all the things. Pre-trade routine. So create a consistent routine that confirms your setup meets your criteria. So this is really powerful. We've talked about pre-trade routines before because everyone's going to be a little bit different. But basically, the whole point of this, if you can set yourself up for the most stable approach to your trading day, you're going to do better in terms of reducing uncertainty and having more confidence because you've done your homework, essentially. It's like going in for a test in math class in college or what have you, and knowing that you have studied and you have practiced and you know what you want to see and you know how to manage certain equations when they're presented on the test. You're going to feel more confident, a little bit more calm. You're not going to be as nervous. You're not going to have the sweaty armpits. You're just going to go in with your sharpened pencils and handle it. And so the more decisions that you make in advance, the fewer fear-based decisions you'll have to make under pressure because you'll just basically take the pressure off of that because you'll know that you are more prepared. You are more focused. You are awake. You have woken yourself up from your sleep and reminded yourself of your system and your setups and your intentions, and you're ready to play. That is a stronger setup for having less of a strong fear response as well. Exactly. Everybody stay calm and take care of your friends and neighbors. So piggybacking off of that, coming in prepared is focus on your process. And so I think that is a powerful approach to trading in general, is being process oriented versus outcome oriented, because I think it's kind of dangerous to think just on the money side, on the green versus red, on the winning day, on the thresholds that you need to meet within your goals. Instead, if we could stay focused on our process, on our trading process that we have studied and rehearsed and asked questions about and modified over time, and then our job, recognizing in the day that our job is to execute our system perfectly or to the best of our abilities, but not to control the market, not to have, a max win day, but instead to allow your edge to present and then capitalize on it with your intended size when the trade presents. And so I think you want to Normalize that fear doesn't necessarily mean danger in trading, because there's going to be a little bit of a response when you put risk on, but recognizing that risk is a part of your process as well. You have to risk to reward, right? And so knowing that you have delineated exactly what your max risk would be, that is so powerful for keeping you so much more level while you're executing your process, and not having to watch the P&L because it's either fine or it's great. Fine is fine. You know what I mean? Like, that is a normal part of growing a career in trading or what have you. Like, some days you're just not going to kill it. If we had a different job and you were responsible for presentation and you know, did your best, you put it together, you thought it was beautiful, you thought it was excellent, and you went and presented it, and everyone's like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and I think you should get fired. That would be a bummer, right? But you probably wouldn't get fired because you would get feedback and redo it. But it's normal to not kill all the time and everything. And in trading, it hits differently because it's money. And we all have a unique relationship with money, for good or for detriment in some ways. And so recognizing that the bad days in trading can trigger us more severely than a bad day in other worlds, because it is tied with our well-being, with our safety, with our finances, with our home, with our relationship with our spouse. And so to try to not let money be a driver when you're actively trying to trade your system, instead treat it as a business professional coming into access, you'll feel better and you'll have less of a fear response. Your mind will go down those other paths a little slower, a little less frequently, and that's protective of you. And then I love the whole idea of reset. So this can be intraday and big picture, but after a loss, it's really good to take a deliberate break, to step away, to let your mind and your body cool down, to let your hormones and your stress response and your heart rate and your blood pressure to just come back down to neutral, so that if you still have time and capital in your day to trade, you can try and reset to your most neutral place in order to move forward from, because that's your best opportunity to do really well. And we want to do really well. And so taking a deliberate break is a strong part of a trading system, because it allows you to mitigate the fear stress response quicker by pulling out the pressure of making it back right away, or trying to function at a high performance level while you're impaired. Because the fear stress response is an impairment to logical thinking. It's physiologically documented as such. And so it's, we don't drive drunk, don't trade angry. So, I mean, it's a good lesson, right? And it doesn't have to be long. Everyone is a little bit different with this. It depends on what size of a loss it was, how, married to the trade you felt, if you were involved with other people with this trade. But it could just be a few minutes. It could be a walk around the block. It could be a breath of fresh air on your patio, but just to reset your physiology a little bit. It could even be, a handful of box breathings, and you're still pretty neutral, pretty solid on the day. You understand your process and you're not going to make real emotional choices. But the whole point of this is to try to not trade in a fear state, because the risk there is that you are trading impaired, essentially. And so your choices are not going to be as rock solid as they otherwise could be. And now I would also say, for this rest ritual, to recognize that this could be on a big picture as well, because if you are in a drawdown for a couple of days, or you've had to reset some accounts and you're just questioning your confidence, the fear response can mount and can hold your body, your emotional state, your energy for longer than just a moment intraday. And so if you feel like you're experiencing a little bit bigger of a drawdown, that's where you want to respect the fact that maybe you do need like a real break, where you have a day out of town, or you do something else, you engage in a hobby, you do some physical exercise and shut it down for a day, and then the next day you just leave it totally off the charts. Some sort of a reset, because you've got to be able to pull your body back to a neutral, healthy state in order to not live in this constant fight or flight, because there's so many health detriments to having your body in that heightened state at all times. I mean, that is a whole separate situation, but recognizing that's not good for your health as well as your trading logic, and knowing that a break is not a bad thing. It actually can be really healthy to take that moment away, and whatever that looks like, hours to days, to be at your best to trade, because we do want to kill it with this trading game, and being as focused and attentive is really valuable. If you're yelling at your computer, you might consider yourself slightly heightened, and maybe manage that trade carefully. If you are heightened and you're in a position, you do want to protect yourself, right? And that might be a situation where you take less risk. If you recognize that you are really heightened, you're fearful, you're aggressive, you're standing and yelling at the candles to print a certain direction, that could be a situation where you're in a little bit heavy, or you're really emotional on that trade. And so I would argue that might be a situation where you do want to scale out at a minimum, or at least snug up your stop loss and protect your accounts a little bit, because there's something a little bit off there, because that doesn't sound like super focused patient trading within your system. So there could be a lot of factors at play. Maybe there's external forces that are making you not quite ideal mentally, or your size is too big, or your risk is outsized. And so the sooner you can recognize that that is not preferred strategy of yelling at the market, the sooner that you can kind of get more in alignment with who you want to be. So I do want to say that a big reason why I brought this up today is that this is a very normal part of becoming a trader. So I would say, argue with me if you would like, but fear is a part of becoming a trader. Learning that you have that fear response, it's going to factor into it a little bit, and that you have to figure out how to work with it. Small size of trade means no pain is loss, so no fear of loss. It means small size, small loss, first step. Yeah, I agree. Starting small will help you ease into this whole world, because I think that's it with like professional traders, right? When you become a trader and you start to get really good, you get bigger accounts, maybe you end up managing money. Those professional traders on the higher levels, I do not think that they have no fear. I think that they manage their fear really effectively, despite knowing that's a part of their body. Instead, they can trust their systems and manage it effectively, because, unless they have a fully automated system and they just supervise it, that's different in quite a few ways. But eliminating fear is not necessarily the plan. It's more about not allowing it to control your choices, about putting safeguards in place with your hard, non-negotiable trade plan and your risk management, and then having behavioral choices throughout your day that help you manage your execution and your intentions as a trader, and honoring your process and your system that you want to trade that gets you to your best outcomes. Yeah, the stop loss needs to be part of your plan. Exactly. So if if you win or if you lost, one of those outcomes is going to happen, and you're still going to be a trader. You're still going to be developing your system. You're still going to be with a positive expectancy over time, because of who you are, how you've learned, how you're showing up in communities such as this, asking questions, creating a more robust system week over week. And that a stop out is not something to be afraid of. Instead, it's just a part of the game. And so these are just some different sentiments that show that fear is a part of trading, such as, I still get nervous on big trades, but I trust my stop loss and my system, and that's what gets me through. So if you're trying to leverage up, because maybe you've been a trader for a handful of years and you're recognizing that you're pretty good at taking out really good trades, and you win more than you lose, and you want to start adding a little bit more leverage, well, in that situation, you're going to have a fear response, because it's a new level, new devil, which we spoke about just the other week. Recognizing that that's going to be a part of the situation you're going to push through, and saying, I expect to have some emotional hesitation, some emotional kickback on me, but I'm okay, because my system holds that with this larger size, my risk will be this and the accounts will be fine, because I'm leveraging up intentionally. And so recognizing that can help you get through those type of situations. Then what about the day I stopped fighting fear and just acknowledged it was there, changed everything. Now I can think clearly. And that's kind of what the heart of what this conversation is today, of recognizing that these responses are normal. This is a cascade that happens within our brains and our physical body sensations, and knowing that that's just a part of our physiology, but recognizing that has the potential to impact your executions and to change the way you manage your accounts, and to give that full credence and appropriateness. You'll get stronger over time. The more you call it out of the darks and be like, I know that my stress level is higher, my anxiety is higher, my emotions are playing into this. I need to protect my accounts and back up for a minute, because I'm not a level-headed professional right now. I'm not bringing my A game. I'm not treating this as like a game day, whereas like backtesting or working on your system after hours is like practice. If it's game day, you need to be in game day quality and showing up that way. And if you aren't, because your fear response is triggered, back away till you can think clearly. That's calming. That's the ability to say, I am still human. I need a minute. I want to trade only on my A game. This last thought here is, my best trades often came right after my scariest moments. Fear was a signal I was taking necessary risk. So that's the point of like, fear doesn't have to be a bad thing. It can be a signal that you are engaging in a risk management situation. It's saying, it can function as like a check yourself before you wreck yourself situation, where you're about to enter with your full size, and you have this little kick up, your heartbeat jumps 10 notches, you take some extra breaths, you get a little sweaty palm before you hit the button. That's a signal that you are about to engage in risk. And so that could be a sign for you to just double check yourself. Am I doing the right thing? Are my setups real? Is this a risk I can take? That alert bell that says I'm afraid doesn't necessarily mean don't do it. It means you have to work with fear. You have to be able to experience fear and not fail to execute, not do something wonky that's against your system, but instead trade with it. And so I love that point of like, it's not necessarily something you have to eliminate. We don't have to eliminate our emotions if you're going to be a human trader, but you do have to acknowledge them and manage them in the moments and kind of call them out for what they're doing, what they're saying, what they mean, how they could impact your choices. And I think that by knowing and respecting this fact, we can push through it. And Mike, owner of BluSky, always says that you are your best edge. And I thought about that with this last line here. Your edge is learning to execute anyway. And so that is how I think, I've seen him. He came back last week trading in the morning, and he really manages his fear because he trades a size that I do not trade. And he gets the P&L that I don't get as a result. But I would argue that he builds up to that over experience and years and trades. And he didn't start with that size. And he learned to execute through the fear and recognize that when he's putting a trade on, he probably feels some kind of way, just like the rest of us, but he tamps it down. He says, this is how and why I can take this size. And this is why I'm getting in. And this is how I'm going to manage it. And so that's just a case in point of like, you are your best edge, and learning how to work with you, with your physiology, with your approach, with your system. That's how you get to the progression that you can get in this game that we're in. So I think that is the bulk of it, is that understanding this fear is that it's not a character flaw. So by recognizing that by experiencing fear, you are a human who is a trader and you're doing something kind of awesome by choosing to enter into a world that's kind of scary and to take on risks that not a lot of people take on. But because you want to push your boundaries as a human and figure out how to, be the big game hunter out there who is striving for these big results and has to endure some fear in order to get there. Like, that's pretty cool. And it doesn't mean that you don't have fear, but it means that you are creating a system that is stronger than the fear. And so you built that strong risk management system in your trade plan so that it's like a fear antidote per se. It minimizes it, it quails it so that you can prioritize exactly what you want to do, how you want to do it, despite how you might feel, because your system is established and your risk management keeps you safe. And so you can trust that system, and your feelings will have just less of a response. They'll get less time in your world, in your heart, in your mind. When you're in a trade and you start to feel some kind of way, you can easily tell yourself, I'm all right. Like, I plan for this risk. If I lose, it's fine. Like, I accepting my risk, and I'm going to let it play out because this is something that I've studied. So I think it's worth the conversation today to have this hour with you guys to just think about knowing that this is something that we all experience to one degree or another based on how much attention we put on it and how long we've been trading and how much of a response we have built against this systematic fight or flight response in our body. And so I would definitely encourage you guys to work on your trading system if you don't have a really strong established written trading system as the backbone of your business of being a trader. And then also practice the breathing, the routines, the journaling as consistently as possible, because if you treat them as a part of this big picture, you'll get stronger faster. Familiarity with these topics, with these conversations, with thinking about your day and how you behaved and what you're proud of and what you want to work on more so will help you get to the long game faster, because you have to do more than just the technicals in order to get to the end game that we're all trying to get to. I think remembering that you define your risk and you're prepared and your edge isn't no fear, but your relationship with it. I think that that's how we can be our best traders. And so I think that's why, kudos to BluSky for allowing me to interrupt your Tuesday afternoons, because I think that these conversations kind of create more of a holistic view on trading than just the intraday candle to candle and technical conversations because I think you got to have all the coins, all the sides of the coins exposed when we're trying to do something as challenging as trading is. Because I don't think there's as many things out there in the world that are truly, really challenging to our intellect as well as our psychology at the same time, with risk on, and your family wants to know how you did, and you got bills to pay. It's all roped up in the money psychology, which is the whole thing. I think maybe I'll have to do that as a topic too. But anyway, I'm proud of us all for pursuing trading and working through this because it's not a small feat, but there are things that we can do to improve week over week. And anyways, praying is a strategy, but not like the best necessarily. Fully hold your system together. So I support all types of spirituality and to each their own, but I would encourage you to also have a strong trading system and practice some personal choices that help you stay focused on your process intraday. Thank you guys so much for being here with me and for your comments. Tomorrow we should talk offline. Just kidding. Do you guys have any questions, any thoughts, feedback? Doc Mike, thank you for being here and for that. I'm glad. There's some overlay in some of the conversations because there's, in psychology, a lot of the same things play into different things. I feel like fear is one that we have to really talk about. It's involved in all parts of this. So it has been my pleasure, and we should. You send me your prayers. Maybe I could put a little prayers on some of my trading days. Thanks, Fatima. See you tomorrow, Coach Matt. Yes, Coach Matt is back for Power Hour Monday through Thursday, and he has got his killer trading labs every Thursday at market close. So they have me with psychology on Tuesdays at market close and Coach Matt on Thursdays at market close. So a couple solid educational hours there. And then you're welcome. And then also we have evening streamers now, Coach Breezy and Coach Blasky in the evenings Asia session, coming in with some more trade opportunities if you have time in your evening. So BluSky has got all kinds of resources and options out there and a community to support you guys, and I'm very grateful to be part of that with you guys. It's gonna be a really great year. Wow, that it's almost the end of January, right? Many more opportunities to come. Do you guys have any ideas on topics for me with our last minute or two here? Any requests that I can dig into? This conversation today has kind of got me thinking about our relationship with money, because that is kind of a big deal when we think about how it factors into what decisions we make. So that's on my list. Otherwise, enjoy your Taco Tuesdays if that's your jam, or whatever you would like to have for the rest of the day. Tomorrow's going to be a very interesting one. There's FOMC meeting and rate adjustment potentially, or stagnation at 11 Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then there's a couple big earnings at the end of the day tomorrow. So tomorrow's going to be a big fundamental potential catalyst day. So stay sharp and watch your back end on that. Watch your risk management with that. And I will see you in the live streams tomorrow, everyone. Take care, guys. Bye.